late Ikeji. Reports just reaching us right now indicates that he passed on. Barrister Ikeji is actually a friend of the house, a friend of the show. He is a personal friend of mine, and I received that news with complete shock. He was even on the show just
very disheartening.
Monday last week. Yes, it's just so terrible. I don't know if we can just get a bit clips of his last appearance on Galaxy today.
I think he has no case until he comes out to the air, to the public, and gives his own version without running away and hiding. You see, in law, whenever anybody withholds evidence, evidence that is with the person to release, and the person withholds it, the law presumes that that evidence is against the person. So my opening salvo is that we will all be saved all this here and there run around conjectures and all this confusion if Mena would come open, give himself up for investigation, prosecution, and speak out. If there are people, of course, I agree with my colleague here that yes, it's an impossibility for Mena to have gone all the way to do what he has been accused to have done without the connivance or participation, if you like, or knowledge, if you like, of several other persons. So we will be saved the secrecy of the names of these other people if Mena can come on air, address Nigerians and say, this is how it is, I did not commit any offense, or I committed an offense, or I did something wrong, but these are the people that did this with me. I'm handing over myself to the law enforcement agencies for prosecution or investigation. And so everybody will be out there, everybody will be clear that indeed every justice is done. Not only done, it's also seen to be done. That is my opening salvo.
All right, welcome back. May his soul rest in peace. Those were his last moment on the show Galaxy today, Monday, when we discussed the Minagit and one scandal to many. Moving on now, we'll be looking at renewed agitations and threat by the Niger Delta militants in the wake of the president announcing a budget just last Tuesday, predicating most of our expenditure on what we will be getting from oil output. So what does all of this portend to the economy? And we have a guest with us here in the studios.
Yes, of course, he's also a friend in the house, or a friend to the house. And he's by the name Destiny Takon, a legal practitioner. Good morning, son. Welcome to Galaxy.
Good morning, Jay.
Good to have you.
Good morning, just here. Good to be here again. Good morning, viewers.
Okay, we're looking at Niger Delta militancy, their renewed agitations and threats. I mean, this is like almost like a bone in the throat. It has been ongoing, and for a while we had a break, like it was peaceful for a while, and now they're back with the threats. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I think you hit it right when you say like a bone in the throat. Yeah, because the activities, of the Niger Delta militants portend grave consequences, for the nation and for the economy. That's why I agree that like a bone in the throat, so I agree entirely with that description coming from you. And my fear, perhaps, is the federal government never or hardly sees it from that perspective. The federal government has severally adopted brute force, against that. Now, you want to look at it from a proper coin, and I would say, why is this happening? Is it that these people are, like they call them, just criminals? A criminal would naturally want to do something to benefit himself directly from that particular action. If a thief was breaking into your house, it's for the purpose of taking something from your house. If he broke into your car, it's for the purpose of taking something from there. Or if he stopped you on the road with a gun, it's to dispossess you of your possessions. But where somebody decides to go out to destroy, facilities, except he is just naturally demented. But of course, you hardly have demented people just doing that. They either go their way, they go naked, or just doing all the things. So a person who does that is somebody who had premeditation and who has a purpose to serve.
Yeah.
And so that's what the Niger Delta militancy represents. And I'm saying that I wish that our federal government, our government will begin to see it from that perspective. Now, so you want to ask, what has necessitated this renewed threat? Why did the threat ape in the first instance? That was because promises were made. And after those promises were made, they were not fulfilled. So the natural thing is to say, okay, if they thought it was because they brought in the military, that stopped us, let's continue to prove our point. That's what I see the militancy as doing. It is proving a point to the people of Nigeria, like I've always said in lots and lots of fora, that you cannot, because of very unfair and unjust federal laws, exploit the natural reserves and resources, God-given reserves of a people, and then use the weight of your laws against them. I don't know which. Now, the natural law, God gave them that, so God naturally gave it to them. And now artificial laws deprive them of these possessions. And when was oil discovered? 1953? When are we talking about Niger Delta militancy? In the year 2017. So you ask, what has happened from all of those years? Isaac Burrow, 1962 or so, started all of these, and what happened to him? We know. Whether he died in the war, he was killed, God only knows. We have Saro Wiwa and others, all over the same cause. So the attitude of government has been, they're beginning to know too much, or the thing that also eliminates them. It will never serve a purpose. Even if you took all of our reserves, all of our military reserves to that place, and the young men decide we'll see proof upon, they will do it. And of course, we are said to have come out of a recession, so to say. Why? Because our output increased. Why did it increase? Because the activities of the Niger militants aped, and so there was increased output. Now, if that were to continue, of course, we would have a decrease, and that would tell on the economy. The budget presented is wholly based on oil, contrary to what a minister for finance had told us. Whatever she meant, she knows better. But as much as you and I know, of course, Nigeria an oil-based economy. And so I think that what government has failed to do all this while, far away from lip service, and of course putting institutions in place and have measures that are often hijacked by politicians for the benefit of their cronies. Government should get down to earth with the business of improving the lot of the people of the Niger Delta. All of these projects you're hearing about, there are projects that have been aligned for a very, very long time that have never been feasible. And so the people ask themselves, if we can't exploit what God gave us, that's my reasoning. I'm taking a peep into their minds. If we cannot exploit and benefit from what God gave our fathers in our backyards, you can't continue taking it out of here to steal. I like to use those words without any fear of contradiction. Like it's been happening billions, and leave the very people from where this reserve is tapped desolate. Poor, and of course, that is justice for now. Let me just put it that way. So,
but in all of this, I still don't understand. If we know that the bulk of our resources, of our income, comes from that particular region, and we've actually had an agreement with the so-called militant, why would we, as the federal government that is right now, why would they want to renege on the promises that they've actually, or the agreement they've had with the Avengers?
Yes, Justin, because there was never sincerity of purpose in the first instance. That's just it. There's no other fathomable ground than that. Because if we were to take into consideration and indeed agree that this is the goose, that lays the golden egg, you would know how better to treat it, And because as I said, it didn't start, I mentioned from 1953, you know, till now, where oil had been exploited in the region.
Yeah.
What is so difficult? And I have asked, I'm a Nigerian at my age. If I can't say what I think is the malaise, the problem of my country, you know, then of course I'll be wasted, you know, generation like most others have been. You know, I might just fall in queue along with them. At my age, and if I have the opportunity, I should be leading this nation. You know, and so if oil were not found in the Niger Delta, if oil was not found in a minority, you know, part of this country, would these things have been happening? And of course, you and I know that it wouldn't have been happening. You know, in spite of the fortunes of oil dwindling the world over, you know, the markets are getting short, less reliance, you know, on oil. We're still spending money derived from there, you know, to explore for oil in arid places, you know. And it is just the height of injustice, as I've said. Yeah. But it's very simple. You know, it is not about how long this has been, but the readiness, you know, to do something about it, to redress it. The readiness to say, these people have indeed suffered for too long. Indeed, we have been unfair to these people, you know. And, okay, let's take it from the perspective of the NDDC and the Niger Delta Ministry, you know. Just like our police force, army, and other institutions, budgets are made yearly, you know, for, I take the police force for instance, for the provision of the baton, for the constable, for the torchlight, for all of, you know, budgets are made for these things, and money is provided. But at the end of the day, as I always said, you and I know when you go to the police station, you know, your relation is held in there. You know, you were asked to tell you the statement on which your relation wrote the statement, or wrote his or her statement. The statement form was bought, which is true. They purchased it from one retailer, one hawker. Wherever he or she got the right to produce those forms, I do not know. You know, they actually purchased them from there. And so government makes this budget, but without supervision and having to ensure that these things are actually provided. In the same manner, with NDDC and Niger Delta Ministry, you have a situation where budgets are made, you know, and at the end of the day, do we have a federal government monitoring task force or something of the like to see to the implementation of this budget and the projects for which they are intended? You know, to go about to see from all of the Niger Delta, all the states that constitute the Niger Delta, to see that indeed so much was voted for this or was said to have been spent for social purpose and it was actually spent. Have we been doing that? We have a situation where even with the amnesty program for the militants, where, as I said, you have a situation where some young men from the villages who had nothing to do with militancy, as a matter of fact, you know, their names were added and they found themselves in Dubai, in everywhere, in every part of the world, in a bid to rehabilitate them. This is part of what I'm saying. The fact that a well-intended program, even on the part of federal government, you know, might just end up because of negligence on the part of the same federal government, you know, that is not implemented to the letter, in the sense that the supposed beneficiaries are not the ones that actually benefit at the end of the day.
Are you sure it's not a thing of complicity on the part of maybe the elders or people from that particular region? Because you've said it so far. We have the NDDC, we have the Niger Delta Ministry, and we've had a series of amnesty programs which were supposedly supposed to tackle all of these issues. Yet we've heard complaints on where these things don't even get to this so-called militants. I mean, I don't know, in my opinion, I think there's a bit of complicity on the part of people from that region. What do you think?
Well, it's a difficult one to say. If you say, I would say we're politicians. Okay. People of the political class. That's exactly where I'm going. You know, those of the political class in the region may be involved in what is happening. Okay. You know, because at the end of the day, those who are implementing this thing are partly who heads the Niger Delta Ministry, who heads the NDDC, and even from the past up to today, they are people from the region. You know, so the funds are brought in. So. And usually, of course, they are people of the political class, you know. And so if, for their own very personal aggrandizement. Like I've said, with the issue of IPOP, for instance, the political class in the East is not so very bothered about Biafra. And the reasons are very simple. They are the beneficiaries of the status quo. You know, so it is the average Igbo man who is suffering, who is feeling the pinch, you know, that says, I want Biafra. You know, because the political class are all of the crumbs or whatever is allocated to the East goes to them and not to every other person in the East. And so same thing as in the Niger Delta, these funds are made provision for, but do they trickle down to the supposed beneficiaries, the communities that are desolate? Look at the Ogoni cleanup that has been pending for how long? Does that also have to do with the elders or indigents of the Niger Delta, or provision of infrastructure? Has that got to do with them? If the federal government was indeed committed, you know, to this purpose, wouldn't we say that, of course, the same way as we're hearing about the Boni Bodo, what do you call it, road project, you know, for like how long? It's just been in, as I always say, in the pipelines. And like a Nigerian would always joke, the youths go to blow the pipeline because all the plants are in the pipelines. That's why they blow them up, so they probably come out.
So, okay, you're saying that this isn't a political thing, or it could be political. I mean, I'm not, well, I wouldn't say I'm in support of people raining threats. I think since they've not been given, they wanted a conversation, and then the federal government isn't attending to this, and they felt the best way to do this is putting lives at risk, because I feel whatever move they're going to make is going to go beyond what they intend. So would you say that this is the right way to get the attention of the federal government?
Lives are always at risk in the Niger Delta. You know, if you did an environmental impact assessment, you know, proper one, you would discover that there are lots of diseases, you know, lots of ailments deriving from oil spillage and the effect on the environment. So lives are already at risk. And it's just for the saying that you're better off fighting for your humanity than to be silent and die in the face of degradation. You know, it is not saying that it's violence, as it were, usually said to be, if you not allow peaceful negotiations or change, you know, then you give way for what? Because the essence of it is to say we want to prove a point. He's not saying, you know, we take delight or that perhaps there's any benefit straight on. As I said from my preamble, there is an immediate benefit from, like, I break the pipeline and the dollars or the naira come out of pipelines for me. Okay, because our demands have not been met, because you've continued since 1953 to treat us like this, because in all of your supposed intervention policies and institutions and programs, you have not been sincere, you know, and we are see where we've been. Okay, then like I said earlier too, right, so rather than you continue to tap this resource to develop other areas other than ours, we that God gave this resource to, that you have taken by virtue of your federal laws, you know, would ensure that nobody benefits from it. So it's simply about proving a point, you know, to say this much we can do, maybe to call attention to our plight, maybe to move the federal government to implement all of its failed promises. So it is not saying that simplicity or at first instance that violence should be an option. But like you see, why was there an ape? Why did they call a truce for a very long while? Because we're giving facility, opportunity for implementation of these things that hasn't happened. And so if it didn't happen, oh well. So let's nobody get this resource away from here anymore, given that you're taking it, as I said, to develop other areas and the environmental impact, you know, to the people.
Okay, fine. Let us look at recent happenings right now. We're all aware right now that the Navy was just in the news not too long ago. They just launched Octopus Group 2. No, I don't know, in your opinion, the presence of the military now, the Navy, the Army and all of that, with all their various exercises in that region, don't you think, I don't know, a school of thought believes you should allay fears and all of that, but I feel that it might even heighten tension around that region. Do you agree?
Of course it does. Now, because of the cause for which lots of people in that region believe in, the sense that, look, you have not been fair to us. You know, when you do this, you help procure, or to put it, sympathy for that cause. Lots of young men who are not involved will get involved, you know, because it is not seen as a fight against this fellow. These people are not fighting for themselves. That's the way to be seen. They're fighting because of the injustice to us. So if you will come and kill our people, we will join forces. It is better that we're eliminated. You know, like I said, let the whole world know that we were killed for our resource than that, you know, we stayed in here and watch you do this. A war, it's a war situation of a truth, yes? That's why troops are moved in. And it is not always the army with the biggest weapons that in this kind of war wins. The victory in this war is not so much about how many militants you kill, but about the effect on the economy and on the nation. So I think this calls for wisdom lots more than application of force. Because what does it take? You won't have, it's guerrilla warfare. You won't have the militants come out and face you, you know, face to face. Just more like Boko Haram has been doing, same way, you know. So they go in stealth. It's hit and run. That's what guerrilla warfare is about. Hit and run, these guys get in the midst of everything, hit, do the damage, and get away. You know, so that's what it's about. And I think that the federal government should be wiser for it. And then, okay, look, talking about wisdom, on the 26th of October, all right, the Niger Delta elders were going to have a meeting. The elders, who usually should, you know, serve as a restraint to the youths, who would occasionally talk to them and say, let's not go this route. Let's give the government a lot more opportunity. You preempted their meeting and made whatever assumptions and disrupted. Sent, you know, security officials or operatives to stop the meeting.
Okay.
To what end? You know, is that a government that actually wants truce and peace in the region? Those are the questions I'm asking. So I think that better wisdom, you know, should be applied under the circumstance. You know, because of course, what the people want to see, it is not saying that the Niger Delta people have been part of this country and they still are. And why do you have agitations today for IPOB, for the Niger Delta Republic, for possibly even Oduduwa and all of that? It is because of the injustices. And this cause is a cause against those same injustices. So I think what should be done, too many Nigerians have talked about this. I have said this in several fora. The best thing to do is to engage, not, you know, in dialogue, in having to talk to the people and say, you know, and then not just at the end of the day, beyond lip service, implement these promises. When the people see that indeed there is infrastructural development in the area, which is key, which is paramount, which should be, I mean, the priority of government for the people, because it's the height of injustice, as it were. What argument would you place against the absence of infrastructural development in the Niger Delta, where all of these resources, since oil was discovered, the pyramids of granite disappeared, the cocoa in the west, and, you know, what do you call it, coal in the east, and all of that, all of those disappeared because there's been total reliance on oil. And it is oil that has been used to build Abuja. It's oil that has been used to develop Lagos. It's oil that has been used to develop everywhere. And then what is happening to the Niger Delta? That's the question to ask.
All right, we're still looking at the renewed militancy, renewed agitation from the Niger Delta region. We're taking a quick break just to remind you that you can be a part of this discussion. If you have a question, if you want to contribute by comment or suggestions, just send a message and the number now scrolling on your screen. Or you can interact with us via our social media platform on Facebook, on Twitter, on